Your next iPhone could be banned, and Tim Cook might just be leaving Apple forever. The US government is suing Apple, and if they get their way, the company we know and most of us love might be changing in some really big and bad ways. So after reading through the entire 88-page report, here are the top 5 things you need to know about what this lawsuit could do to Apple, how the iPhone could never be the same again, how Apple might be forced to make some big changes, and if you own any sort of Apple product, listen closely, because I've got some really bad news for you. Let me tell you why things are about to get crazy.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC.
Oh, hey, iPod, nice.
Yeah, it's just a little something to hold my slow jams.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, so I'm sure some of you watching this video have no idea what this is, but for those who do, please comment down below and let the youngins know, because this has got to be one of the best ad campaigns of all time. For the uninitiated, this was the Get a Mac campaign that Apple ran from about 2006 through 2009, and while it only was on the air for about 3 years, it was iconic for its simplicity, its humor, and really its message. Justin Long portrayed the cooler, younger, creative guy that was, of course, the Mac user, while John Hodgman was the older, more stuck-up, more corporate business-like guy, which of course is gonna be the PC. Yeah, there's absolutely no denying that the Mac did not have the market share that Microsoft did. The Apple share in the computer market was pitiful, but what these ads showed was that the Mac was built for the creatives. It had better software, it had better integrations, and when compared to the PC, Microsoft's approach, and really every other PC vendor, was boring, stale, and not nearly as fun, which showed really what Apple had to offer with the Mac and with their ecosystem as compared to the other guys. And if you sort of zoom out and look at Apple as a company, this was sort of their MO from the very beginning. One of the very first big differences between Apple and Microsoft was that Apple was building this closed ecosystem. They made the hardware, they made the software, they bundled together an experience, while Microsoft made billions, hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars by making the software and then licensing it out to every PC maker under the sun. We saw it when Apple got into the phone business and the tablet business, the computer business. They wanted to have end-to-end control, for better or worse, while the competition was sort of giving away their software on every sort of shape and size device you could want. Basically, it was very clear over the years the two different paths you could go with. The open system that was more customizable and sort of let you fit with whatever device you wanted in your life, and Apple, which is what you see is what you get. Not a lot of options. It was abundantly clear from the early days that Apple was a very closed system, but as their product lineup grew, they had to make some concessions in order to sell products and make money. Yes, the best experience you could have with your iPod, for example, when that crashed onto the music scene, was if you owned a Mac, but Apple also realized that there were millions of people who used a Windows PC that also could benefit from an iPod, so Apple eventually relented and did release iTunes for Windows, though as Steve Jobs put it,
like giving a glass of ice water to somebody in hell.
And especially over the past 2 decades, Apple has built this incredible walled garden that works magically well if you're inside the walls. If you own an iPhone and an iPad and a Mac, your stuff just seamlessly syncs like magic. You don't have to think about it. The experience is wonderful. But if you try to use a Android device with your Apple product, if you sort of try to break the walled garden, in many cases it will technically work, but the experience is probably purposefully degraded and really doesn't give you all the features, because Apple doesn't want you to sort of be in the garden and out of the garden. They want you all in, and if you're not sort of playing by their rules, they may sort of technically make things work, but it's not going to be pretty. And really, that's one of the big arguments of this lawsuit. The government claims that Apple has a monopoly on the mobile phone market and that they are intentionally breaking the experience between non-Apple devices and Apple devices. In fact, the government claims that Apple dominates, quote, not by making its own products better, but by making other products worse. One of the most popular and polarizing examples of this, even stated in this complaint, is the whole green bubble versus blue bubble debate. Not only are there some intentional differences in features between when you're texting iPhone to iPhone to Android, like high quality photos and read receipts and stuff like that. But many believe that there is just generally a stigma between blue bubble to blue bubble and blue bubble to green bubble. The green bubble can feel alienated, and the government claims that Apple is doing this on purpose to force people to buy an iPhone. Now, yes, of course, Apple is set to adopt RCS soon and sort of fix a lot of these issues, but that's still not going to change the bubble color, and by and large, the damage is already done. And really, that's sort of the crux of the problem here. The government claims that Apple just has too much control over the space, and not only do they degrade the experience if you interact with a non-Apple device, but they sort of punish you for doing so. Then there's the whole issue of developers who have to play by Apple's rules and they've got to give a certain cut, and if you try to circumvent the App Store, you get punished. There's the Epic Games fiasco and other developers who have challenged Apple. Basically, the government says Apple monopolizes the phone market, they have too much control, they bully developers, they bully users who try to use their Apple products on Android or Windows platforms. Things have just sort of come to a head now, and the government claims Apple needs to be stopped. And obviously, I should say that Apple's whole counter-argument to this is that it's a good thing. This is sort of the experience that they've proudly built, that if you do own Apple products, you get this magical experience. It's because of their tight integration with hardware and software. They're able to do incredible things you just don't have on other platforms, and that all of these things are a benefit to owning Apple products, not a drawback. They firmly believe that they are an innovative company doing many great things, and they are doing what's best for their users and building a great experience. And obviously you can comment down below on who you believe is right, but this has sort of always been Apple's thing. This is their game. They love the walled garden. They build the walled garden. It's one of the big draws to owning Apple products and being in that ecosystem, and they believe it's a benefit. It's a good thing, not a bad thing. Okay, so that's sort of what the government's saying. That's what Apple's saying. Let's sort of get down to brass tacks here. What could actually happen if this thing went to trial and Apple lost? What big changes could us as users actually see? Number one is that Apple actually could be forced to break up the company and sort of the different divisions. Now, admittedly, this sort of seems crazy, and I would be very surprised if this actually did happen, but we have seen this historically before, and other companies have gone through this in order to comply with the law. When they're seen as a monopoly, they've got to break things off. So we could see potentially Apple spin off major products into their own companies, like AirPods becomes its own multi-billion-dollar company. The Apple Watch becomes its own company. They could be forced to sort of sell off these divisions into independent bodies. Wouldn't it be crazy to think that like a Facebook could come in and swoop in and buy the iCloud company and bye-bye privacy? And there are definitely a lot of implications here. It could happen, but I think this one's way more of a stretch. Number two is that Apple could be forced to make some really big changes. One of the biggest parts of this lawsuit, of course, is the whole green bubble versus blue bubble thing. And not only could Apple be forced to sort of adopt RCS, adopt this open standard, maybe even make the iMessage standard open for other sort of companies to use so everybody's on sort of the same page, but also wouldn't be surprised if the government, because of the stigma with green bubbles, forces Apple to make all bubbles one color. Maybe they're all blue, for example. Apple could be made to make some changes here because the government's cracking down, and they could be forced to make some big changes, like making all the bubbles the same color. Seriously, this could happen. Change number three Apple could be forced to make is one that would break a lot of people's hearts because it would mean the exit of Mr. Tim Cook as Apple's CEO. A leadership change at Apple could be enacted to install a more government-friendly head to the company in the CEO position. Again, I'm not saying that this would happen, but if we did go down this road and we saw a lot of bad PR against Tim Cook, and he was someone who really fought for Apple and what he believed the company was doing right, and Apple lost, there could be sort of pressure from the government, could be pressure from the public or Apple's board to get a new CEO in there to sort of clean house and make things better, correcting some of the issues that the previous CEO had. I also think that if we sort of look at Tim Cook, he's a man known for doing what others probably wouldn't. I feel like if push came to shove, he would fight as hard as he could for the Apple he believed in and believe what the company was doing. And I think that if Apple was forced to make some changes he didn't agree with, he'd probably step down on his own accord. Again, I'm not saying this is a clear-cut thing and it's going to happen, but is it in the realm of possibility? Yes, it is. Many people believe just a couple of years ago that the United States suing Apple, the beloved, best company in the country, some would say, is sort of crazy and would never happen, but here we are. So anything is possible, and this is certainly on the table. This is something that could happen. Change number 4 is something that could happen if things get really dire. Let's say this thing does go to court, Apple loses, they're found guilty, but they still don't comply with what the government says, they don't play by the rules. The government could do something that we've actually seen over the last couple of weeks, and that is put a ban on certain Apple products, maybe even banning the iPhone. Yes, again, an iPhone ban could actually happen. As unlikely as it seems right now, we actually just saw a couple of other Apple products banned just a couple of months ago. So don't say it'll never happen here in the United States. Again, I couldn't imagine Apple not complying with the government and sort of not playing by their rules, though we have seen Apple on multiple occasions sort of choose to pay the fine and break laws and not comply with international governments, but that's probably a separate video for a separate day. If the government was to see Apple as not complying and doing something wrong, they could ban their products. We've seen it over and over again with different companies. Apple, in this case, is not immune. All right, and change number 5, what's probably gonna happen with this case, let's just sort of get to the crux of it, and that is probably gonna happen behind the closed doors and get resolved without anyone knowing. I believe first off that a trial for this wouldn't even move forward for years, so things would move very slowly anyways, but I'm sure that once the media attention dies down, some government officials and lawyers and Apple's high-powered legal team is gonna meet behind closed doors and hammer this out and find a solution. Maybe this results in Apple making some small changes and the charges are dropped. Maybe there's sort of a plea agreement here or some sort of compromise where Apple pays some fines and some money. I can't imagine Apple making any significant changes from this, at least as of right now. I'm sure that Apple, with all their cash and their great legal team, can maneuver some sort of backroom deal to make this go away. Okay, so I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this, guys? Your thoughts on the government suing Apple? Do you believe that Apple is running a monopoly? Do they have too much control? Are they exerting too much negative attention on the bad guys? Do they have too much control over the users? Do you like the walled garden? Do you not? Do you agree with Apple here? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for your support. You are amazing. Thank you for watching. I appreciate y'all. I'm Robert Rosenfeld, and I'll see you all in the next one.